Oh, right, let's try one more. Is that recording? Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Right, I'm going to get started. Really sorry about that, everyone. Just kept freezing on me. So if you could just keep yourself on mute throughout, that'd be really helpful. And we'll get started. So the aim of today's meeting is just basically to give you an insight into how maths is taught at St Mary's. So what we do with the children, the different methods of learning. So there's different ways that we learn in maths, and we want to share that with you so you guys have a better overview of what we do and how we do it, so you can support the children at home as best as you can. Year one, I will share with you the overview, so what we teach and when we teach it, just so you guys have a better insight as well. We'll break it down into some of the bar models and the part whole models, just going through the way that we teach it, because if we teach it the same, it makes it easier for the children if they're hearing the same from us at school and the same from you guys at home as well. That just makes it a little bit easier for the children. We'll discuss number bonds, mental strategies, so that's our mental maths, so I'll go into depth about what that is, and then hopefully I'll give you some ideas that you can take away and how you can support your child at home as well. So hopefully today's meeting will just give you a better insight into what we do and how we do it. Okay, so just getting started then, just wanted to introduce this, so the mastery approach to maths. So that basically means how the children learn. So mastering maths means that children are acquiring a deep and long-term, secure and adaptable understanding of the subject. So we don't just brush over something. We really, really want the children to have a deep understanding of it. So that means they can see it in different ways and they still understand it as well. So the phrase teaching for mastery, it describes the element of classroom practice and school organisation that combines to give St Mary's children the best chance of mastering maths. So everything we are doing in our lessons is helping the children to master maths, and we're doing that in many different ways, which I'll share with you throughout tonight. And it basically means acquiring a solid enough understanding of maths that's been taught to enable the pupils to move on to more advanced stuff. So if they don't get the basics, they're going to really struggle as they go through the school. So, you know, in year one, obviously, we're really working on those basics and getting that groundwork in now, so that when they progress through the school, it becomes easier. So we're working really hard on that in year one. So basically, acquiring mastery for maths is something for all pupils, and that's really important at St Mary's. You know, we don't have little sets that go off. We don't have a top, bottom, and middle. They all go and do different things. We work together as a whole class, and it means that it enables all pupils, with only a tiny proportion of exceptions, to succeed in maths. And that's what we want. We want to move through it as a whole class so that every child is given the best possible chance of succeeding in maths. That's not some children sat over in the corner doing an easier thing or something more simple. Everybody is getting the opportunity to succeed in maths, which is really, really vital. And we want them all to get a really deep and secure understanding of the subject. So like I just said, we all move through it from content at the same pace. Each topic that we cover is studied in depth, and the teacher doesn't move on. So I wouldn't move on until I know that all the children have grasped the thing that we're focusing on. And the children demonstrate that in the lesson that we do. So we do maths every day. So we have obviously five days in school. So on the Monday, the children, we focus on mental maths. So I'll come on to mental maths a little bit later. And then the other 4 lessons, we do it in the morning when they're nice and fresh. We're focusing on the curriculum, which again, I'll go into as we go through. And just an example of this is number bonds. Number bonds are massive in year one. It's something we spend a lot of time on. And for example, number bonds to 10, I wouldn't move on to number bonds to 20 until the children are secure with their number bonds to 10, because their number bonds to 10 support them with their number bonds to 20. So if they haven't got that secure knowledge of their number bonds to 10, they're going to really struggle with their number bonds to 20. So that's just sort of an example of how we do that at St Mary's, and that really supports them with that deeper understanding. We give the children plenty of time to think deeply about maths. There's no point in rushing through it so they don't have time. Obviously, we spend lots of time on maths, and we give them lots of different concepts at a rational level, so they get to learn it rather than just a set of rules, do this, 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 and this. They actually understand the concept of what's being taught, and we give them time to think, and we give them time to instead of just telling them, we give them time to discover it and to work it out themselves, which, you know, this slower pace that we go at allows them that time to do it, rather than, right, what's next, we're moving on, we're done. We don't, you know, we don't do that. We give them that time, and it does lead to greater progress, because it does ensure that the children are secure in their understanding. And then hopefully that means we don't have to revisit the topic once they've been covered in such depth, because that knowledge is secure and it's really embedded into their brains, which is what we want. We work really hard at St Mary's to build self-confidence in learners. We want the children to be confident in maths. So we really, you know, we want them to be secure. So, you know, in traditional primary schools, we've probably all heard about children being put into different groups and given different content based on their anticipated ability. But this means that from an early age, children, you know, they're classed as the children that can and can't do maths. You know, that's just not true. So teaching maths mastery is different, because it offers all the children access to the full maths curriculum, which is a really inclusive approach. And it's an emphasis on promoting multiple methods of problem solving, which helps to build self-confidence and resilience in children. And that's what we want. You know, sometimes I'll get a child come up to me and say, oh, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me? And instead of just, you know, giving them the answer, it's about pulling that question apart. Well, what's the question asking us? First of all, I'd say to them, have you read the question? And, you know, 9 times out of 10, they go, oh, no, I forgot. So we start there, you know, reading the question first, pulling out those vital bits of information that they need, and then working together and, you know, going back to what we did at the start of the lesson, how did we work that out? And sort of building that resilience. You know, if I just tell them the answer, that's not going to do that. So it's about giving them the confidence to sort of think, right, I know Miss Roberts told me this earlier, or my mum told me this. Let's use that knowledge that we've gained and that we're building up through each lesson to be able to do that. So that's really what we want. And we differentiate. Obviously, there are children that find maths easier than others. So we do differentiate through depth rather than acceleration. So we do move through it at the same pace, but, you know, we differentiate through that depth. So unlike the old model where advanced learners are accelerated through new contents, they might have started learning things in year 2 or year 3. We wouldn't do that, but we'd make sure we're stretching them within the concept that we're doing. So we'd give them a challenge, which is maybe a rich and sophisticated challenge within that topic. And those children who are not sufficiently fluent are provided additional support to consolidate their understanding before moving on. So if a child was stuck on their number 1 to 10, they'd be given manipulatives and things that they can use to support them to get their head around that concept before we all move on. Whereas, you know, I might have a child that can do all their number 1s to 10, but actually when I put it into a word problem where they have to read, they have to pick out, they find that a lot more difficult, and all of a sudden their number 1s to 10 are a little bit harder, because the question's asking me to work out a lot of other things before I get to my number 1s to 10. So I think, you know, that's really important. And the mastery approach to maths is something that we, you know, at St Mary's, we work really hard on to ensure that all the children can come through and can succeed in maths. And we want to really build these self-confident learners and children that think for themselves, that are not relying on us to do it. They're really thinking for themselves. So, and we do that through breaking our lessons down into small steps. And I think at this age, it's really important. It's little baby steps, but those baby steps are really building on that end product of what we want the children to learn, and sort of providing lots of opportunities for them to apply their knowledge as we go through. So that is something we really focus on in year 1. And another major thing is that we really focus on that fluency. Quick and efficient recall of number facts is really important. And I know I speak to the children, and we do it a lot in school. We play hit the button and things like that. That's because it is that quick, and that they have to think of them really quickly. And the quicker they know them, the easier maths becomes. So that's really important. So like I was just saying, we really do follow those small steps, and we follow White Rose Maths, which breaks it all down for us. And this is just a little example for you guys to see. This was one of our topics is place value to 20. And this just shows you the small steps that we take. So we'd spend at least a lesson on each one. But say, you know, 10s and 1s, that's quite tricky for them in year 1 to understand that 11 is made up of 10 and 1. It's not 1 and 1 like they can see. So a lot of them, when we first started, I'd be like, we speak about 15, and 15 is 1 and 5. But, you know, and it's not, it's 10 and 5. That place value is really important, that they understand they're adding 10 and 5 together to make 15. So, you know, we might get a little bit stuck at 10s and 1s, so I'd spend another lesson on them and I'd get things out to support them with it. But this just gives you a little bit of an example of the small steps we take in order to have that secure understanding of place value to 20 at the end of the block. And without these small steps, you know, they probably aren't going to be secure. So that is why it's so important to do that as we go through. So just giving you a little insight into the ways that we learn at St Mary's and to help the children acquire that deeper knowledge in maths. And these are the 3 steps that we sort of take, and it's so important to not miss out one of these steps. So there are 3 different ways of learning that we use to support the children. And these are used throughout school, no matter what age and what ability. You know, even in year 6, they will do the concrete element that I'm just about to explain. So the concrete method, is all about using equipment to practically do maths. So, you know, it's all about getting that mnemicon out, those deans, those counters, object shapes, and everything that, you know, we have in the classroom. And I'm sure you guys have some bits at home. But that practical element really encourages the children to understand. They can see it. So when I'm talking about 15 and I've got a 10 frame out, I've got 10 counters here and 5, not got 1 and 5, and they can really see that as and they're looking at it. So that concrete element is really paramount in year 1, and it supports their understanding. Without this stage, children often just don't understand what it is we're actually asking of them. They sort of miss that element. So, you know, some people can say, oh, my child can do their times tables or something, but they probably haven't done that concrete stage. They've missed out. Do they actually understand what 3 times 2 is? It's that sort of understanding. And at this age, it's great for them to see it and to manipulate it, for them to move it. In maths at the minute, we're doing adding by making 10. So knowing that 6 add 5, we add 6 and 4 together to make 10, and then we add 1 more. And it's really, they found it really difficult. So we've had loads of counters and things out, and they've been physically moving the counters, and then they're like, oh, I get it. So it's those sort of, that's the reason we do that concrete learning for their understanding. From there, we move on to pictorial method of learning. And this is where the children use drawings to aid their understanding. So part, whole model, bar model, and also drawings, which I'll go into a little bit more depth as we go through the PowerPoint. But that is sort of the next stage. So from concrete, they move to pictorial. And then from pictorial, they would move to abstract, which is using written and mental methods to solve a calculation. So they would see it sort of number sentences. So they know that 3 + 2 is 5. But often, if they've missed out that concrete and pictorial, they might be able to answer that, but they might not actually understand what that means. So that really seeing it helps them to understand. Some children might always need that concrete element within their maths, and that's okay. You know, I often say to the children, they're stuck on a question, I'm saying, you know, get up, go and get your own counters, get your mnemicon. And it's sort of developing that independence. If they're not sure, they can always go and get things to help them. And I think that's really important, that the children know they can always do that to support their learning as they're going through school. And we always say that the maths area is always open for them to go and grab bits and bobs to aid their learning. So this is just an example of what the concrete method is. It's all the manipulatives that we have in school. And as you can see with the mnemicon, that really supports the children, that they can see. We do it with like our number bonds. They get the 9, they get the 1, they put them together, and they can see that that looks like 10. And I think that visual sort of representation for them really helps them to do that. So there's lots of practical bits that children can manipulate. So if you didn't have that at home, you can get things like pasta out, you know, get them to put the pasta in the line, and other bits and bobs, beads, clips, anything they've got at home, but giving them that opportunity to see it physically can really help them to develop the relationship between numbers and how they work as they go along. So from there, they move on to pictorial. And as you can see, that's a part whole. This is a pictorial method of learning, which the children, we spend a lot of time understanding it, because it is a tricky method for them to grasp. And we use them to help children to understand what the different numbers mean in a calculation. So, for example, at the top here, we've got the whole, and down here we have the 2 parts. So it's helping the children understand that that 3 and that 1 make up the whole. And it's getting them to understand that as we go along. But then also we've spent a lot of time really focusing on missing number sentences. So if that part's gone, what's missing sort of thing. So they know that, oh, okay, so I've got 1, oh, so it must be 3 that's missing. And that visual representation really supports that learning as they go through. Another really important thing to mention is they don't always see things the same way. So here I've flipped the part whole, and sometimes the children haven't seen that. They think they would just maybe say, oh, this is the whole because that's at the top, and they think it's just a skewish one. But actually, it's really important to change things around, turn it around, say, oh, the hole's down here now. And it's the same with number sentences. We can put the answer at the start and have the equal sign. It doesn't change anything, but it's a different way of looking at it. So sometimes, you might be practicing with your child some number sentence. It's always good to just swap it around, and then they'll go, what? And you just say, oh, nothing's changed. We've just swapped it around. Or if you swap the 2 and the 3 around, I go to them. So 2 add 3 is 5. What's 3 add 2? And they, that can see their brains ticking. Oh, it's 5. It's the same. We've just swapped the numbers around. So I think that's, really, really important that the children know that, if the numbers move, it hasn't changed anything. Another pictorial method that we use is bar models. And this is, again, another pictorial where we've got a part whole and a bar model up here. And these are both pictorial methods. And then we're moving into a more of an abstract method down here. But these 2 pictorial methods are supporting that abstract method. And like I said, you can see here how we swap the number sentence around to support that. And this is a really good example of how we teach the children lots of different methods to answer the same question. So it's still the same question, but it's just shown in lots of different ways. And can they make those links between, oh, which part is missing here, which part is missing here? These are the 2 parts, these are the 2 parts, sort of thing, as they're going through. And if they couldn't do this, then I'd go to them, right, go and get the numicon, get a 10, get a 9, what's missing? Oh, 1's missing, and they'll be able to visually see that. So it's just sort of knowing which stage the child's at and sort of working with them through it, but also recognizing that every stage is just as important as the next. And then here's an abstract way of learning. So the child will just see the sum, and they'll be able to use maybe the part whole in their head, or they might see that and think, oh, I'm not sure, or I could count on. So they could do 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and so on. Or they might put it into a part whole just to support them, or they might draw something. So it's all of those, they can see that and think, oh, how do I work that out? Some of them might, use their number 1 to 10. They might know that 7 and 3 makes 10. What do I add on to get to 8, sort of thing. So it's all of those methods that we've worked on throughout school sort of builds to this abstract way of learning that they will probably more likely see in their papers and exams as they move up through the school. Okay, so I've sort of covered the 3 ways of learning that we do at St Mary's. I hope that was useful just to know what we do with the children in school. So I'm going to move on now to just sort of, this is an overview of what year 1 learn at it during year 1. So it gives you an overview from week 1 to week 12, and it's broken down into the 3 terms, autumn, spring and summer. And as you can see, they build up on each other. So we start at the start of the year with place value to 10, and place value is so important, understanding, what the place value is of that number. Then we move to addition and subtraction, and then now we're onto those numbers within 20. So they all build on each other as they go through the year. And if they miss a part, it does affect their understanding. So it is really important that the children are doing those small steps to get that deeper understanding as we go through. And like I said, we're on to addition and subtraction within 20, but when I'm doing it with the children, I see them using all those methods that we've learned already in addition and subtraction within 10. So that's really, really important. So just a little bit about how our maths lessons work. So we always start off with a flashback 4. And as you can see, it's 5 questions. So there's 4 here, and there's always a little array of counters or something up here that the children have to count. And we start every lesson with this. And the reason why we do that is it's really, really vital that we keep revisiting previously taught objectives so that the children retain the information they've taught. They learn 2D shapes in reception, but that doesn't mean they haven't forgotten it. And that constant revisiting and talking about it really, really helps them. And things like that you guys can do at home with, just in your bedroom. What shape is that? What shapes can you see? And just revisiting things. If your child finds shapes difficult, you could be talking about that. And just dropping like little seeds in all the time is what we do at school. And they don't even, know that they're learning, but they pick up their book and I say, what shape's your book? oh, it's a rectangle, or, you know, so on. So it's just that it allows, you know, us teachers to assess the children's learning as we're going along. And more importantly, it also opens up any gaps, anything they might have missed. So if I ask everybody what this shape was and no one put their hands up, I know there's a gap in 2D shapes. So I would, you know, pick that as an area to go over. So this normally takes 5 to 10 minutes. The children have their whiteboards. They're really, really super at this now, 1 to 4 on the board, and they get on with it straight away. And then we go over it together and we discuss the sort of the methods and things that I would be using to work that out. So that's how we would start our lesson. And I think this is just really important to see why flashback is so important. This graph just shows that in 2019 stats paper, it had the greatest number of year 3-4 curriculum content ever. So I think, you know, if they're not recapping and re-going over it, by the time they're in year 6, if they've forgotten their year 3 and 4 curriculum and it comes up in the exam, that's, you know, that can be a problem. So these flashbacks really help us. You know, I'm covering stuff from reception in my flashbacks and things like that. And they do that as they go up the school, they'll recover stuff in previous years, again, to identify for a teacher any gaps, but also to keep that fresh in their brain as they're going through. And that's, you know, really, really important. So that graph just sort of shows why it's so important for flashbacks. So moving on to the structure of the White Rose lesson. So like I spoke about with the concrete, pictorial and abstract, this is just a worksheet where I've just snipped parts of the worksheet together, and I think it really shows that element of learning. So we'd have obviously the concrete where they've got the 10 frames and that visual element, followed by the pictorial where they're putting that into a chart or a picture, followed by the abstract. So it just shows you how it builds within the lesson. And it's really important. Sometimes people might look at this bit for their child and think that's really easy, but actually if they don't have that understanding there, they're going to struggle as they go through. So even if it is really easy, it's still good for the child to see those counters and to move. You know, I say, even if the picture's there and if I have a child that struggles, I get them to move the counters themselves so they can actually do it. And that's really, really useful with them. And then we use the challenges through reasoning and problem solving to deepen that understanding. So like I just said, within maths, the children always have ready available challenges to them. So if the child, you know, they whiz through their worksheet, they don't just close their book and think, oh, I've done now, because we're always stretching them and wanting the child to apply what they've learned into many problem solving questions. And I think especially at the minute in year 1, this is what they are finding hard now, is sort of that problem solving and applying what they've learned. Some of them are, you know, wicked at their number 1s to 10, but when I put it into this thing, they're like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. So it's about breaking it down and, like I said earlier, reading the question and getting them to apply that knowledge, which we're working on together really well. But yeah, it's just a challenge at the minute to sort of get them to apply that knowledge. But once they get it, they always go to me, oh yeah, that's easy. And it's just about getting them to apply it. But things that I do with them in maths is getting them to explain to me, oh, but how do you know? You know, they tell me that 2 + 3 is 5. How do you know that? And getting them to, you know, really verbalize it and get them to say, well, oh, I know because, and showing me on their fingers, or if I get counters out and things like that, how they know something. And I think that really helps to deepen their knowledge as they go through as well. This page just sort of shows you the 2 papers that we do with the children. So they'll have an arithmetic paper where the questions are more, you know, number sentences, sums, things like that, and then a reasoning paper where the questions look more like this. So there's a few, it's a bit more wordy, and they have to work out little challenges and things like that in the reasoning paper. But I think that's just useful to know that the children do sit 2 different papers in maths. It's not just one. So one focuses more on the arithmetic and the mental maths, and one focuses more on the reasoning and the sort of challenges that we do. But yeah, that's just a little overview of the type of questions the children will get. So I mentioned earlier at the start, we do mental maths every week. We do it on a Monday currently. But mental maths, we don't just do it on a Monday. I throw mental maths in all the time because it's such a quick and easy thing that you can do. Things like when we're lining up for lunch, I've got 2 minutes. I'll just say, right, number 1 to 10, I'll say 9, they say 1. And just sort of, it's that constant recall of number facts, and we just cover it lots and lots. So this is just an overview of all the rapid recall and mental strategies that we teach in year 1. and we're going through them throughout the year. So they don't come home every week, but we do it sort of as we go through the year. They will have covered all of these different mental strategies. So most of you will have seen that we send home a mental maths slip. So every few weeks, or whenever I feel that the children are starting to grasp the mental maths concept in school, I'll send home the slip in their book bags. And this is just for you guys to know what skill we're currently working on and how we're teaching it in school. So it's useful for you guys to be doing it the same way, and so they don't get confused and things like that. But we regularly practice in school, but it's so important if they get a bit 5 minutes at night, they can also practice it at home. And a lot of these things are on games and things like that, so you can practice your number 1 to 20 on hit the button, and the kids in school, they absolutely love it. And they're always saying, oh, I got this score, and they make it into a bit of a competition. So I guess at home you can have a little competition with them and let them win, and things like that, which we do in school, and they love it when they beat me. So it's keeping it fun, but it's just that recap and that revisiting of it really supports them. And then so the first picture is the slip that would come home to you guys, and then the second slip is the mini test that we do in school. So once I feel like the kids have grasped it, they would have this little slip put into their book, and they would have a go at answering it. And obviously, if a child gets them all wrong, I know that they haven't grasped the number 1 to 20, and then we need to revisit and re-go over it. But that's sort of how I can tell. Those little mini tests just really help me to know, have they got it or have they not. So yeah, the more practicing they're getting at these mental maths strategies, the better and the stronger they get at them as they go through. So these are just a few of the websites that we recommend, and they're really good for helping the children to recall their number facts. So yeah, that's that. So just thinking about things that you guys can do at home, fluency is key. So the more they practice it, like I've said, the more they're going to know the answers. And this can be done through you guys playing games. It can be done through games online. It can be done with their brothers and sisters. It can be done lots of different ways. It can be done just firing quick questions at them before they brush their teeth, and all of these quick little, and they don't even know, and making it into a game and things like that really supports them. So I just suggested number bonds, hit the button, like I've mentioned. Matching numbers to words. A lot of them, as they go through, they quite struggle to spell their words, because obviously we write them a lot in numerals. But when I go, oh, how do you spell 13? So just getting them to write out the words, or using their phonics to sound it out, to really support them with that, because that can come up in their papers. Things like, can you spell the number 13? And they have to write it. So things like that. Missing number sentences, which we've done lots with, and I know they're the last 2 mental math slips that we've sent home. So just really working with them on that, practicing that technique. So we often encourage them to count on. So 4 plus something is 6. Put 4 in their head. 4, 5, 6. And I get them to put 5 in their head, and then count on their fingers, and then they can know. That's just a way that we can support them with it, is practicing that skill with them as often as we can. Lots of role playing. I always get asked in the playground if I want to go and buy a pizza from the little huts, and instead of just giving me a pizza, I say, oh, how much is that going to cost? Okay, that's 20p, but I've only got 50p, and we work it out together in just little fun activities that we can do, and I'm sure they play lots of games at home. So just little things like that make maths really fun. Other ideas I just sort of thought of: following a recipe, working together to bake, getting the children to think about how much they need of everything, weighing the ingredients, seeing the numbers, discussing, have you halved or doubled the recipe, discussing ratios of ingredients, discussing more or less, do we need more flour or more butter, things like that. We need more flour and less butter. It's really important to model that mathematical language so the children are using it when they're doing things like that. Talking about the weather, that's something easy we could do every day, just getting up the weather on the phone. Is the temperature higher or lower than yesterday? It was 5 yesterday and it's 7 today, so it is warmer. The temperature is higher. And talking about what that number means. So 11 degrees, well, 11 is 110 and 1 1. 12 is 110 and 2 1. So 12 is, it's greater, it's bigger. Getting them to finish your sentence. I always do things like that to sort of help them. Going shopping, so talking about the cost if they really want a chocolate bar or whatever, how much is that going to cost, and things like that. If you were to buy 2 items, or we need to add them together, just simple things like that. Letting the children count the coins when you pay. I know everything's contactless now, but just if you had the coins, letting them to count it out when they're paying. Can they get you 10p and 1p coins, things like that. Planning an outing, discussing how long it takes to park, how long you're going to be there, when you need to leave the house. You know, lots of the time children find time, although they don't need to be able to tell the time yet, but we've been in school for half an hour and the child will say, is it nearly lunchtime? And I'm like, no, not yet. So it's that concept of time. We haven't been in school long enough for it to be, be lunchtime, or is it nearly home time and we haven't had our lunch yet? So just having those discussions with the children, so they sort of get that concept of time. But my main thing would be to keep maths fun. Maths is fun, and if the children have the love for maths, that's going to really support them throughout school, and they're going to want to learn, and they're going to want to learn their numbers. So that would be my main advice, is just keeping it really fun and active. Before I go, just one more really, really important thing. That's, it's number formation. It is massive in year 1. We do get a lot of mixing up of the numbers, writing backwards. We often have 9s that look like P's, and things like that, 5s that look like S's. So it's just that repetition, getting them to practice it. If you ever go to the beach, doing it in the sand, oh, yours is the wrong way, swap it round, things like that. The earlier we can nip it in the bud of them doing it the wrong way, the easier it is. Because when I speak to teachers up higher and they're like, oh, they're still doing their 3s the wrong way, it's really difficult to break that sort of, that brain, those thoughts the children are having when they're doing it. If they are used to doing their 3 backwards, it's really hard to break that process. So if we can nip it in the bud in year 1, that's super. So we do it, lots of the children are practicing the number formations. We have lots of laminated cards, and they just practice writing them out, and we could do it with chalk on the playground, and anything to keep it fun. When you can make them doing some cooking, you can have the flour out on the side. Can you do me your number 8 before we start doing it? Just little things, so they are really practicing and knowing which way to form their numbers. And it's really important they know which way to start their number. So if they're starting it a 7 that way, they're going to go the wrong way. So it's about where they start their numbers. So yeah, that sort of covers everything that I've got to say about maths. If anyone has any questions, please come and see me and we can chat about that. I hope that was helpful. Yes, lovely to see you all on Zoom, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.